listening to the Jersey Guys Podcast, the show that talks about hard rock, heavy metal, AOR, and West Coast music. In-depth conversation and special guests are always on tap, so settle in and turn it up. Now, here are your hosts, Tom and Mark.
Hey, everybody. Mark from the Jersey Guys podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Tom Coyne, and special guest, TJ Coyne. He's been with us a couple times before, so we had him back tonight. We're going to be talking about the band Toto, as you can see. But as you also can see, we're doing video tonight. First time we're doing video. And Tom, this, I think, was your idea, right?
Well, it's my idea, and it's been a lot of people annoying me and driving me nuts about doing it. And I'm on board with doing it. It was a process. Mark is very picky. We've been very picky about everything we've done with the podcast in terms of presentation, guests. So it's a process. We want to do everything as best we could, and we're here.
Yeah, I mean, we
got there.
My thing is, I always wanted it to look good, and I want it to sound good for everybody out there listening. And that's one thing I want to ask everybody is tell us what you think. You know, do you like the video? Do you not like the video? Does it not matter to you? Let us know. You know, follow us on our YouTube page if you don't already do that. Follow us on our Facebook page if you don't already do that, and just comment. Let us know what you think. You know, you like it, you don't like it.
Should we wear luchador masks? Are we not what you thought you were gonna get? You know,
right. So but like I said, you know, a minute ago, we're actually going to do a discussion on Toto, and we had to have TJ here, you know, because he's been on before. He's done some Black Sabbath episodes for us. He sat in on a Styx episode when we talked about their albums.
Iron Maiden too.
Iron Maiden, right? Yeah. And the top 25 that we did. 25. So we had to have him back because I think this is good because I got like 3 generations here, right? You know, so it's like this is a band that we all love. So it's something that's really, I think it'll be good to get the 3 point of views.
You have old, moderately old, and extremely young.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Right. So Tom, I want to ask you, you know, what do you think about? We've been talking about doing this Toto thing for a while, right?
Dating back to the summer, I believe we were tossing this around, and it was also always geared toward wanting to do it with video. So we finally got there and just figured that this was the perfect episode to do. You know, a band that all 3 of us equally love.
Oh yeah,
and it felt it needed a lot of time and attention, and hopefully, you know, Toto fans, moderate Toto fans, people that aren't even Toto fans will listen and maybe get turned on to the band as much as we are.
Yeah, definitely.
In my opinion, in terms of diversity, it may be the greatest band of all time. In terms of diversity.
Oh yeah.
Maybe right after the Beatles, they may be that high up. You know, when you look at AOR, jazz, progressive rock, hard rock. Yeah, I mean, they click all the buttons and did everything at an incredible. There's very few bands. I mean, really, other than the Beatles and maybe 1 or 2 other bands.
Yeah. So like TJ, tell me how you got into Toto, because you're a young guy, 22 years old. Mm-hmm. And did you go to your dad and say, hey, you know, what about this band? What can you tell me about them?
Yeah, so all my life, I just knew Toto for Africa and Hold the Line, you know, all the songs you hear on the radio. So one day I just reached out to the master over here and I said to him, you know, what else is out here besides these 2 songs that everyone knows and everyone hears about? And he pretty much opened up the floodgates for everything else to come. So I did my research, went back all the way to Toto 1, and made my way all the way to the present, you know, the last album. So, and now I'm here.
Yeah, good. Tom, how did you end up getting into the band?
You know, obviously, I knew them from when they first came out. I was 20 when the first album came out. I liked it, similar to my son. I liked the songs on the radio. I didn't know that much about them. I have to be honest, I didn't run out and buy the albums because it wasn't exactly, you know, where I was musically at the time. I was all about, you know, the hard rock and the heavy blues at the time. And I would say I really started to take notice of them around the Fergie into Joseph Williams era.
Yeah, it's like the mid '80s.
Yeah, yeah. I know from again hanging out at Zigzag with Vinny and getting more. That was the time I started to get more into AOR and appreciated it more. So I would say it was probably, yeah, 84-ish is when I started to go back and say, okay, I need to buy all the albums. I need to really know this band because it's the guitar playing is phenomenal. And a lot of it had to do with Lukather appearing on so many
Yeah,
other albums.
right.
And
That
like,
you had
and
and you
Eddie
knew
Van
about.
Halen was
Yeah.
always gushing about Lukather.
Hmm.
And it kind of like added a lot of credibility. Like the hard rock guys were
Yeah.
very big into him, and then they started doing the stuff with Michael Jackson a little bit later after that. So it kind of like it started to build with me where I had to really digest the whole band.
Yeah. That's an interesting point. How you talk about these guys were like sessions players, the bulk, the core of the band. And it's like they've literally been on thousands of albums over the years. So even if you weren't like a Toto fan, you probably had something in your collection that these guys
Right.
played on,
Right.
or part of them, at least some of the guys, whether it was Lukather or Paich or whoever. Like for me personally, I got into the band. And again, you mentioned Vinny and Zigzag. When I was going to Zigzag in the late 90s, I started getting into this band on the Minefields album, which came out in 1999, I believe.
Yeah, that was the big return of Bobby Kimball.
Yeah, when he came back into the band, after leaving after the fourth album and stuff. But I that's when I got into him. I mean, again, like TJ said, I knew, Rosanna and Hold the Line and Africa. Everybody knows those songs from,
Right.
pop from rock radio and classic rock radio and everything. But yeah, it wasn't until that point that I really got into Toto. It was around the late 90s. So it was a different track for me. It wasn't like I was there. I missed that whole really first half of their career.
No, I did too. I mean, I'm not gonna be a phony and say I was a Toto fan from day one. I liked some of those songs on the first album because they did have a heaviness to them.
Yeah.
I didn't really follow them like on album 2 or 3. Then of course they had the fourth album, which had all those hits again.
The big one. Yeah.
And it was honestly, it was the Fergie Fredrickson, because we knew him.
Mm.
He was a name from that time, and then the Joseph Williams stuff, which I liked, and the fact that they were on a lot of different albums. These guys.
Yeah.
And once I was onto that, I remember I was starting to research. Oh wow, these guys are on this. These guys played on that, and then it was the way all the metal guys were always gushing about Lukather, and rightly so, of what a great guitar player he is. And then then a little bit later he started playing on the Richard Marx albums.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
The third Richard Marx albums did all those great solos on it. But I was already into them by then. But yeah, I mean that just set me on a course with a tremendous amount of love for them.
Yeah. And it's interesting, like you said, I mean, a band like this, how you'd said in the beginning, they kind of touch on every kind of genre of music. It's like you got hard rock, you got progressive stuff, you've got the really super poppy stuff. We were talking earlier about the whole Michael Jackson kind of sound that was introduced on some of those Joseph Williams albums.
Fahrenheit, and I think even more so the seventh one.
Yeah,
the first couple of songs on the seventh one.
Yeah,
you really saw that Michael Jackson influence.
Yeah,
I thought,
because you were into the late 80s at that point. 86, 88 over there.
Well, that was you had Paich and Porcaro and those guys who were writing for Michael Jackson and stuff like that, all involved. So when you look, even when you go back to the very first album, I mean, you see different influences in the songs, different. I mean, you talked about being on different like radio stations. I mean, XM has yacht rock radio, right? In the summertime. And you hear like Georgie Porgy and
Africa all
the time, constantly, and a lot of people don't like Georgie Porgy, and I like it.
I do. I like that song.
I'm not a big Georgie Porgy fan, but
I like it.
I like it. It's cool. But I mean, yeah, like let's talk about like the beginning part of the band. I mean, these were guys that were all sessions players in the LA scene. Paich, Hungate, Jeff Porcaro, and then they kind of got together and said, "Hey, let's do our own band type of thing." And they brought in Lukather, they brought in Steve Porcaro, another Porcaro brother, right? And the first album comes out in 1978. What were your thoughts?
I remember hearing that album on those the signature songs on that and liking it a lot. again, I didn't run out and buy it
Right.
because it kind of it was at least formulated at the time as being a more of a pop rock
Mhm.
Yeah.
type of band, which I didn't have at that album came out. I was actually not even 20 yet. I was like 19. I didn't have the capacity to really delve into that stuff. I was still more into, the Sabbath, Purple, Johnny Winter, Robin Trower. If it didn't fit that mold, I was, but I remember liking that album, and I didn't run out and buy it. I didn't own it. And that was as far as I delved into it.
So was that album big in the States, you would say?
Those songs were, I don't know if the
Line-
album was.
Yeah.
Those songs were. Those couple of songs on that
Yeah.
album.
Yeah.
Hold the Line was really big, even on FM radio, like on the good FM radio stations. It wasn't something that was, I would say, massive, but on the FM radio stations, which I used to listen to, it was pretty big.
It was
Yeah.
big. It
Yeah.
was a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
put them on the map for sure. Like you said,
Yeah.
Hold the Line.
Yes.
I mean, that was
Absolutely.
obviously, it's still a song that's
Still going. Yeah.
Yeah, you hear it constantly,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there was other good songs on that album, but like you said, it was
there's a lot of great
a lot
songs
of
on it.
different like
Yeah.
sort of like styles,
Yeah.
and it was like you got like stuff even like you start off with Child's Anthem, right?
I love Charles.
And it's like this instrumental
start,
thing,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then you kick in the "I'll Supply the Love," which is ultra poppy, right?
Right.
Mhm.
But then you got stuff like "Girl Goodbye," which is kind of like a heavier,
Right.
little hard rocking driving song.
Oh, it's a great song.
"Hold the Line," even like a Manuela Run. Like I like
That's
stuff
I like
I
that song too.
too.
Yeah.
different. It's kind of
I like that song.
I don't know. It's not exactly poppy. It's more, I don't know what you would call it.
They
but-
were so ahead of their time that decades later, people were still trying to digest
Yeah.
this stuff.
Oh yeah.
Let me ask
Definitely.
you guys a question.
Mhm.
What do we think about Angela?
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
kinda
too.
indifferent about
I
it.
know you like it.
I'm a
You
fan
like
of
it?
Angela. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I am.
He
I
likes
mean,
it.
it's funny because when we were doing this, I kind of printed out a page for each album because I was going to reference it, and I would highlight the songs that meant something to me. But Angela wasn't one of them.
Angela didn't make the cut?
I didn't highlight it, so
Yeah. I mean, it's a slower song. That's why I wanted to know
Yeah.
what the vibe was. But
No, the first album's great.
Yeah.
The
it's-
interesting thing with Toto is they always seem to have the songs, or they put a woman's name.
Oh
in
my
it.
God, yeah,
Anna,
this-
Leia,
they are the
and
king
Pamela,
of- yeah.
Angela, right? Pamela.
Yeah.
It's like,
Pamela, they are the king of that.
they had all that, yeah.
yeah.
So then, I mean, basically that kind of, let's move on to the second album, because Hydra, I think it's not an album I'm really a fan of.
I second that opinion more.
Yeah.
I do.
Well, the thing with Hydra is it did have a couple of their real signature songs on it.
This is true. 99.
Right.
White Sister.
White
is
Sister,
still a
which
song
is
that's in
just
their
a
set
monster
today.
song.
Great song, like you mentioned earlier. Hydra, the
Yep.
song
The
itself.
song. Yep.
I mean, and that showed their progressive side.
Hydra.
Yeah. I mean, that showed their progressive side a little bit, their heavier, harder rock side.
And
to
I'm a
the
big
band.
St. George fan.
Yeah, that's a good song.
I love
Yeah.
St. George.
That's a good song.
Yeah.
I can't get behind it. I don't know.
Yeah,
This
I love
is a
that
very
song.
spotty album in my opinion.
Oh,
Well, it
yeah.
is.
It
The
is
stuff
totally-
that's heavy
The
and
stuff
hits-
that's good is
hits.
really good, and then there's
But
some
there's the
stuff
stuff
that's a little
like St. George. I could do
Yeah,
without
no, I love
99.
St.
I
George.
could
Come
do
on.
without 99.
Really? Yeah.
I could do without it. But the songs that are on here that hit for me are heavier, in my opinion, than the first album.
Definitely. Yeah.
sure.
That definitely showed
Which
they were
is
trying
weird
to be
because
a
I like
hard
heavy
rock.
stuff, but the stuff on the first album, like Hold the Line, I'll Supply the Love, Girl Goodbye, like those are softer than what's on here. But the stuff that's on Hydra that's heavy that I like is really good.
And these were from the albums of the time, which were basically 38 minutes, 39 minutes,
true.
37 minutes.
Yeah.
It's me and TJ were talking about this. It's hard for me to almost give some of the love to the earlier stuff as opposed to the latest stuff, just because the albums are so short. Some of them had, a couple of songs that weren't great.
Yeah.
And you're really whittling down on some of them to 3, 4.
Oh, totally.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you get into from like the Joseph Williams period onward. Then you saw like the 50-minute albums, the 60-minute albums.
Right.
And some of those albums are they're really chock full of great stuff.
Yeah.
So it's almost, for me, it's hard to say those albums are so great
Right.
the early stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why if when we divulge our lists, my lists are a little bit more like toward the later period
Because there's just more songs.
it's just more
to dissect.
music, right?
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right.
You look at the early stuff, you see eight songs on the album.
8 songs, right.
It does grow as the years go on to
Right.
12, 13,
Right.
14.
And they weren't a band that put out crap. So if they did an hour's worth of music, there's probably 55 minutes of it that's quite worthy, you know? So I just found it's a little hard to compare, Toto in the 2000s as to Toto in the 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah. You could say that about Sabbath too. I think you had made that argument too. That
Yes.
As the years went on,
Because that was the
albums
era.
had more tracks on them.
Right. I mean, if you cracked 40 minutes on an album back then, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
Now you put out a 40-minute album, it's a
nothing.
borderline EP.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to point out. You can already see the distinction with the first album versus the second. You had mentioned.
Well,
this,
they were already tipping their
the
hand
band
that
covers
we're
a
not doing
wide
this by the
array
numbers.
of
Right.
types of songs and stuff like
Right.
that. You can already see it. It's already, the first album is a lot softer. It's more poppy, and then the second immediately it becomes more heavier.
Which, to their credit, they already had songs on the first album that were huge commercial successes, but they didn't follow that formula. They didn't.
They
give
changed
into
it
that
right away. A year later. I mean, this
Right.
is in '79,
Right.
so it's a year later, and they're already.
That goes to
changing.
show you the musicianship and the thought process of the band is that they were on the cusp already of being like a pop rock sensation, and by the second
They
album,
just made a left turn.
they
and,
didn't
and
follow
just,
the formula.
Yeah, they changed it.
Yeah.
To their,
Well, so that would bring us up to an album, the third album, Turn Back.
Yeah, I mean
Now-
that's
There you go.
yeah, that's a seminal album. Yeah,
I mean, I know personally, and we talked about this in the top 25 episode, that's my favorite Toto album. So, a little spoiler there. But I know, TJ, we were just talking about this before we started recording. It's one of your higher up ones, right?
Yes, this is going to be number 2 on my list. Turn Back is phenomenal.
Oh.
I think, again, there's
No argument there.
I believe there's 8 songs on this.
Yeah, it's
8
not
songs,
a long album.
not a long one. But what is on here is tremendous, I think.
yep.
there's not much filler on this album.
Yeah. Gift with a Golden Gun, English Eyes, Goodbye Eleanor. Those 3 songs, I think, could easily make Toto's top 10 songs of all time. And the fact that
I
they're on
agree.
one album is
I agree.
tremendous. But again, the stuff that's also on there besides those 3 songs are still good.
They're good.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
It was a very poppy album to me.
Right.
Yeah.
But Bobby Kimball sang his ass off
Yes.
on this.
Yeah.
I mean,
His vocals were through the roof.
that's the
on
thing I
this.
think
Yes.
that makes this album more than
Yeah.
the only thing I could, if I had any bitch about this album at all, is the first, or the original release. The production was a little
Yeah,
thin, not too good.
And they
sounding.
remastered this
They did.
album. They did recently. Yeah.
2018. I
I think so.
they-
Yeah.
They redid
Yeah.
it. So yeah, it's was it part of the box set? Was it
I'm
part
not
of
sure.
it is.
one? Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
So,
But it sounds good on Apple Music's.
yeah.
that's probably the remastered
Yeah,
version.
I would think so. I would think so. But again, the other songs on here, like Million Miles Away,
Oh,
even the song itself, Turn Back, I think is really
Turn
good.
Back. It's a great
Turn
song.
Back is
For
a good
today,
Live
it's
Today,
it's
yeah.
it's just, I think,
Yeah, it's a
amazing.
terrific album. This was I out of the first 3, it's probably cover to cover the best.
But
the
was
best
it
one.
received well when it first came out?
Right.
No, I don't think it was. No, not at all.
That's
well,
what
I
I
think
see
that
when
actually
that's what I
started
read.
with the second album. I think because they came out of the gate, they had some success, commercial success with their first album, Hold the Line.
Yeah.
But then they put out the second album, which really didn't have any. You got songs like White Sister, like you talked about, which are
Yeah.
great songs, but it didn't really have that impact commercially.
Right.
And then they kind of went in a more poppy direction on the third album.
Yeah.
So it's like you went from being hard rock, and now you're going back to pop. I mean, even some of the stuff on Turn Back has a little Beatlesy influence,
Yes.
and stuff, which they are perfectly
Yeah, I mean
transparent about being Beatles.
That's
fans,
creeped up on the number of their even their more recent releases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think actually Lukather, I was reading something, doing a little prep for this album, and I think Lukather said that this album was kind of like their "fuck you" album,
Yeah.
with the label and stuff.
Right.
They were just kind of it was a weird album, but it was
For me,
what
it-
but it ends up being my favorite.
one of my favorites. So
Yeah.
I agree.
So what, Tom, you rated up high there on your list?
Yeah, no, like I said, I easily did the best of the first 3.
Oh, the first,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, yeah,
in
no,
my
I
opinion.
totally.
From cover to cover.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's the thing I said. There's no real radio songs on it, but I mean,
Right. But
I
it's
think
got
if people
some.
don't know it
A
or
Gift
aren't
with a
familiar-
Golden Gun is
Oh, forget
one of
about
their
it,
best
you know?
songs.
Yeah, totally.
And yeah, it's a terrific album.
Yeah. So now that album comes out, the band's kind of like, I guess they're in a little bit of a state of flux in a way,
Right.
because you know the first album has success, the next two albums aren't really commercially great, but then they released Toto IV.
I think the pressure was on, and they had to
Totally.
make an impact. This was the impact.
Yep.
Sure.
Oh,
Toto
yeah.
IV.
I mean, you start with Rosanna on the first track and you end with Africa.
Yeah.
I mean, those two songs are huge.
Yeah,
still
that's
huge.
that's true.
Still-
Yeah, it's
still huge.
It's the two best, or the two biggest songs on the album are from the first and the last album. Yeah, Africa. Losers in the Night's another deep track that I liked a lot too. Afraid of Love.
I Won't Hold You Back is a great
Won't
ballad.
Hold You
Won't
Back
Hold You
is
Back.
another one.
Great,
Yeah,
great ballad, Toto ballad.
yeah,
came out.
yeah. This is a terrific album.
And they kicked it up in the production on this.
Yes.
too. You can totally hear it.
Yes,
you know?
it was much fatter production.
Totally,
So,
yeah. So that was a good thing. You know, they knew. I guess they knew, like you said, that the pressure was on probably from the record company. It was kind of like, we need a hit.
Yeah, because you put
know?
out three that were, or at least two that were a little shaky, and it's
Yeah.
like you gotta,
Yeah.
Yeah,
gotta do
so
something
that-
here.
Yeah, this probably was their make or break album.
Yeah,
in
that's-
terms of
that's a good way to put it.
being like on a major label and everything.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. So that was a good album. That was 1982 at that point.
Yep,
right?
82.
So they're like
Well,
4
they had-
years into their career.
Enjoyed a lot of success in Japan
Mm.
with the third album.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because that's true. They did. And a band right now, like when you look at Toto today, they're like huge in Europe, right? They're like an arena band.
Yes,
But like in America, they're not, more like a
Right.
theater band,
Right.
get on a package type of bill. But
and,
they
and
had
we saw
success.
them when they weren't even a theater band. We saw them when
As
they were
a
when
club
for a period
band.
of time. They were a club band.
Right, in
Lukather
America.
was quite
Yeah.
pissed off about that. Lukather got to the point we're not going, and he didn't. They didn't tour the United States for a while
right.
because he's basically, you could go to Holland, Germany, and
Yeah.
play 10, 15,000.
Yeah, sell out arenas.
Right,
Yeah.
and then we're playing in front of 400 people in a club.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just not financially feasible for us to. And we've seen them.
Yeah.
Both of us have
Right,
seen
right.
them in clubs
But you talk about that they were big in Japan, at that
in the
at
late
that point.
70s,
Yeah.
1980ish, like right around that period. Yeah,
Yeah, that was kind of where they hit first, and I think
Yes.
the Europe thing came much later, and America,
if you go on YouTube, there's some great pro shot footage of concerts from Japan
Yeah.
with the whole original lineup, the
Yeah.
original 6 guys.
yeah. So that, like you said, that was kind of their make or break album, and it made them, at
Yes.
that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Africa was #1 on the billboards. It
Oh
was-
yeah, yep. That was.
But then
I
they
think
lose the
Rosanna
singer.
was number 2, right?
Yeah.
hit number 2 on the Billboard, and Africa went to 1.
Yep.
Right.
I mean, here an album and a
Right.
1 and a 2.
But then they lost
on
their
an album.
singer.
Yeah.
And then, now that's where we get to that
Right.
point. I mean, that was 1982. I mean, where do you go from here? You lose Bobby Kimball, right? And
Yeah, well, if anybody, I was talking to TJ about this, before we went on the air, and if you read a look at this book, they threw, Bobby Kimball out because of coke.
yeah,
And Lukather says in the book, we were all cokeheads, but the
Right.
singer can't be a cokehead.
right.
So,
Well, they actually started to record the next album,
Yes, with him.
Isolation, right,
Yeah.
with Bobby Kimball,
Yeah.
but he couldn't cut it.
he couldn't cut it
You
even
know?
in the studio.
Yeah.
And
I think he
that's-
sang the
always thought
song
that-
"Lion." That's what I read, that he claims
that
that
far.
yeah.
What?
He claimed, Bobby Kimball had claimed that he recorded the whole album. Lukather said it was only just a song "Lion" on Isolation that
Okay.
Kimball had recorded.
I have to agree, because I would think after all these years, I would think if he recorded that album, it would have surfaced
Yeah,
somewhere.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that would have been like something like me and you would have been going nuts to get our hands
Yeah,
on
Yeah, you would.
the Bobby
you would
Kimball
dig for that.
version.
Yeah.
But it's whatever. I don't want to get into the name calling of those guys over the years, but
Well, like the first 4 albums, you got the lineup is pretty much intact.
Yep.
You got Kimball on vocals right now. Again, he has his issues, right? And then Isolation comes out in 1984.
Yep.
What were your thoughts, TJ? I mean, as far as Fergie Fredrickson taking over, as
I'm a
lead
fan of
singer?
that. Yeah, I'm a fan of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's so different than the formula before with Kimball.
Yes.
But for me, it hits. I mean, it's not their best work, but it's also not their worst. I mean,
Right.
No, I agree
You
with
know,
that. Yeah.
I pointed out the song "Endless" to you earlier before the show,
We were listening to this,
which
I haven't listened
think
to that
"Endless" is
song
the
in
best song
years.
on the
Really?
album.
Yeah. Great song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, and that wasn't even one of the ones I highlighted.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. "Angel Don't Cry" is on there.
I think it's
"Stranger
a
in
top
Town."
heavy album. Like it
Mhm.
starts out like the first 4 songs are like awesome.
Yeah.
And then I
You think
thought
it fizzles out
it
after
fizzles
that?
out.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
Mhm.
get a Holy Anna at the end. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
You don't like that?
Nah, I can do without it.
I mean,
Carmen's good. I like Carmen. Carmen's good.
That's I mean that's Carmen, Lion, Stranger in Town,
Stranger in
Angel
Town.
Don't Cry. Those first 4 songs on the album I think are great.
What about the song "Isolation" itself?
Isolation's great.
I like
Yeah.
it.
That I mean, you know, but
I was never
it's-
wild about this album. I'm wild about him, Fergie. He's probably one of my top 5 or 6 singers. But with Toto, I don't know. This album was just okay. It
Yeah.
never really moved me. You know, it's, you know, I don't know. There was something about it that just.
Well, interesting thing is Bobby Kimball was the original singer, and he started before he came into the band Toto. He was from Louisiana, I guess, in that area.
He was in LaRue, right?
And he was in
Yeah.
LaRue, or an early version
Right.
of LaRue. And then it was funny because he is the singer in Toto. He leaves, he gets replaced by Fergie Fredrickson, who was on a LaRue album. So Fired Up, right? Which is kind of the mid 80s. And
that's a good Fergie.
if you're a Toto fan, I mean, look into
that LaRue album.
that. Yeah. So that was kind of interesting. So now he only lasts 1 album. And
It's a one and done.
yeah, but now he had his issues too, right? I mean, they basically let him go because he couldn't cut it vocally, right?
Yeah, you know, again reading the Lukather book, the camp was mixed on him. There were a couple of guys in the band that really liked him. There were a couple of guys in the band that didn't want him to begin with. He had some issues performing live.
Yeah.
I don't think he really grew. I was telling TJ this. I don't think he really grew into who he was. I played him the Fredrickson Phillips album.
Great album.
And if you listen to his vocals
Yes.
then, I mean, his vocals are good here.
Right.
But if you listen to what he sounded like 10 or 15 years later,
Yeah.
I mean, it was another dimension.
Right. Yep.
I mean,
agree
he
with
was
that.
like David Coverdale, but better than David
Yeah.
Coverdale.
Yeah.
You know, like that type of voice. And I think it was tough shoes for him to fill because, you know, Kimball had that booming hard rock voice that just filled up a room. And Fergie at that time was a younger guy, and you know, and he had that very high end
voice. He was able to
and
hit
he
the high
didn't
note,
get
really.
that. Fergie, as he got older into his 30s and 40s, got that beef to his voice also with that high range.
Yeah.
And I think it just wasn't a great place for him to be. You know, I would have loved to seen him sing with them in the 90s.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
So right place, wrong time type of
exactly.
type of thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Respect it.
But it's, you know, it's a good record. I don't dislike the record. I just am not as you know, when you're on Facebook, you're on these million different sites where guys go nuts for this. And I sometimes think it's just because of who he is and he did so many great things.
Yeah.
Because me personally, the album was just okay.
Right.
That's how I would rate it in terms of Toto albums.
Yeah. No, I gotta agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, now that brings us kind of up to he lasts the 1 album he's done. Now we're at the Joseph Williams era. 2 albums he does, the initial era, Joseph Williams, before he came back more recently.
Right.
I think you're big on these.
Yeah,
right?
this guy.
Oh yeah, no.
Loves Fahrenheit. He loves
I love Joseph Williams on
loves
this
it.
album too. He came from the Ed McMahon school of. He was on Star Search,
Stars. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
which was hosted by Ed McMahon.
Yeah.
And
well, of course, his dad, you know, was the big the soundtrack guy in the movie. You know.
Yeah, no,
music
he's from
guy.
that's the odd thing with all of these guys involved with Toto.
That's
They're
true.
all from
All their fathers.
yes,
played,
Paich's father,
Yep.
the Porcaro.
Yep.
You know, most of them.
Marty
were-
Paich, Joe
right,
Porcaro,
right.
yep,
In
yep.
fact, Marty Paich, I noticed plays on
Plays a lot. Yeah, he does play string arrangements. and
string
things
arrangements.
like that in a lot of the
I never
albums
noticed that
early
until
on.
I was looking at some of the liner notes.
Yeah. Well, there were so many Dan Porcaros, you know. It's like you're looking at, it's like Mike was in, Steve was in,
right.
you know.
Jeff, of course. was-
right. I mean, but it's you almost, and you got Joe Porcaro, the dad, and it's like, so there's so many different, you know,
right.
guys that were the fathers.
No,
the
they
sons.
you know, the Porcaros and Paich were guys that, you know, they were from they were from that background.
Yeah, right. They came
And
out
Joseph Williams, too.
Yeah,
And they went to Lukather went to high school with Joseph Williams.
right. And
Even though-
Didn't know that.
Steve Porcaro too, I think.
And Steve Porcaro. Yeah. But he was younger than them. They were in the same high school, but they're not. I think he was a freshman when they were seniors, like that type of thing.
Yeah.
But I love this album because it was the first Toto album from the first note to the last note. I loved everything.
Okay.
I loved him singing. I just love this album.
Okay. They were poppier, right? I mean, they went in that more
Absolutely
kind of not that they hadn't done pop.
Well, it was
before,
kind of
but-
that 1986 sound.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
A little high tech in
Yes.
parts, a
Yeah.
little bit,
Right,
you know.
right. It was like what was like in vogue in movie
That's true.
soundtracks,
Yeah, good point.
and you know, the Michael Jackson stuff, the early Richard Marx stuff.
Yeah.
It was music of its time.
Yeah.
It definitely, if you put this album, if you know nothing about music and you put this on, if you were around, you could probably guess that this was like 1985, 6, 7, just by listening to it. But I think it's a great. I don't think there's a weak song on it. I think he fit perfectly. I think he fit so much more than Fergie did with Toto, and I love it. It's a great album, in my opinion.
It's spotty.
Oh,
Spotty.
yeah, spotty.
I'm gonna say spotty. And
Father and son gonna throw down here.
you know, when I was starting to dive into Toto, I had reached out to you and I said, "Give me a song, any album, name it, and I'll check it out." And he says, "Look at Can't Stand It Any Longer on Fahrenheit."
Which is my favorite. It's my all-time favorite Toto
Really?
song.
So I check it out. I listen to it. I'm like, wow, this is great. You know, Joseph Williams, he was phenomenal in the song, and I fell in love with it. And I was like, okay, so let's now look at the rest of the album. And I was like,
Really?
yeah, you know, I mean, the song itself, Fahrenheit, is good. And again, you had said it kind of has that late 80s sound to it in that song. And then there's also Till the End, which I like as well. It's kind of catchy.
Till the End
Great
is
song.
great.
But the rest of it,
His vocals on Till the End.
Oh,
the
we
rest-
can make it tonight.
That's-
Like a real poppy, right? Like catchy.
Oh, he sings so good on this album.
the rest of it, I take it or leave it. That's how I feel.
Interesting.
Not bad, but that's how I feel.
Okay, no, that's it.
I love the lineup. It's the seminal album for me.
Okay. Interesting. Well, now we move on to the second Joseph Williams album, which is the seventh one, the band's seventh album,
Very interesting album.
1988.
Talk about this for a long time. This album.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
a
you
very
want to start it?
interesting album. I don't think it's as good as the
Really?
predecessor. No,
See, I feel the opposite. There it is, the seventh one. I think that's the better of the two original Joseph Williams albums, in my opinion.
most people do.
Yeah.
I agree.
Most Toto fans are very, very big on this.
I agree.
Pamela is all right. I could take a leave. I thought the first couple of songs were like too much of that Michael Jackson, almost like I thought he was like aping his vocal style.
Do you think that was like a Steve Porcaro thing, or like with him kind of like his writing? Did he write on this? Was he? I guess he played keyboards on this.
Yeah,
right?
he did.
So I mean, he wasn't. He was like kind of like not really. He was in the band in the beginning, but then he kind of
Right. Well, he
left and did his own thing.
Right.
So maybe that was his influence on.
I guess I don't really know, but I the first few songs I thought were just a little too.
Well, I like Pamela. I like Anna. I like Stop Loving You.
Stop Loving You.
Mashunga, Stay Away.
Stay Away.
Straight for the Heart.
Only the children.
It's a great
Only the
song.
children.
That's
such an underrated song, in my opinion.
I agree with you 100%.
See, to me, Stay Away, Straight for the Heart, Only the Children with a meat and potatoes.
Home of the Brave.
And Home of the Brave.
That's a
The
song
last
that they
song,
still
the
play
last
song on
today
the
too.
album.
And which we were going to talk about, which I have the CD
Yes.
single.
Nice.
The seventh one, which was the name of the album and a terrific song that they left off the album. It appeared on the Japanese vinyl, and it also appeared on a CD single.
Wow, I got to track that down. So
Yeah.
it's, the title song on the album didn't even make the album.
Right.
That's
And
so
if,
weird.
if you're
That's
a
weird.
CD aficionado, you'll see how it
A little 3-inch CD with the
Little
adapter.
That
3-inch
artifact
CD.
right there.
You ever seen
with,
one of them?
with the adapter.
See that?
Some
And
device we got.
I never understood why they left this off, like the American release, because this is a terrific song.
Well, how funny when they made those the CD trays, right? They didn't have that little cutout in the middle.
They didn't have the cutout with
right.
It was they didn't start making those till around 1990.
And then they put the little 3-inch when the 3 inches became.
It was around 1990 they started making those.
Yeah, so you had to have that adapter.
You had to have the adapter. So I never really. I guess maybe in Lukather's book, I don't remember why they left this off the U.S. press. This song, especially since it was the title track of the album.
I'm ashamed to say I got to track it down.
Very bizarre, but I think I like this song a lot. So obviously you got to consider it part of the album. I think it ups the album a little bit, in my opinion, because I think it's better, at least in my opinion, than a lot of the songs that were on the album.
I got to get that.
You're not a Mushanga guy?
I'm not a Mushanga.
Are you a Mushanga guy?
I am.
He is a Mushanga
guy.
guy.
I'm a Mushanga guy. Yeah, I like that. I like that.
Okay.
There's a Mushanga guy in every group.
Well, there's 2 in this group. So no, I like that. I was just listening to it not long ago.
Yeah.
I like this album. Don't get me wrong. It's got great production too, and the great bass playing by Steve Porcaro.
Yeah. Great
bass playing. Guy was just, oh my God.
Yeah.
Such a good bass player. As were all 3 of them.
Yeah, that's musicians. True. I can't say any of these guys anything bad about their playing.
No, I mean, I got to see Steve
all the way through,
twice. He's really impressive bass player.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, now it's weird because the band's kind of like in this state of flux. I mean, now they basically get rid of Kimball because he's got substance problems,
and Joseph Williams goes down the same.
Now Joseph Williams goes down the same.
You know, the thing with Joseph Williams was he was a guy that had musical background from his family, but he wasn't really cut out at that time to be fronting a major rock band. He was in his early 20s. He had no experience singing, like on that level. He was a guy, he was appeared on Star Search, you know, and he went from a nobody to, a guy that was playing in front of 20,000 people, and he went down the same road. He developed a drug problem, which, it's common knowledge. It's in the book and everything.
Yeah.
And they had to can him for the same reason that they canned Kimball, because he was a singer that was doing too much blow.
Yeah.
And he had to go. So, and off he went after 2 albums.
Well, and that's weird because now the band's like that happens again, and they're in that weird state because they do what is it, the past the present album,
right?
And basically they got, was it Jean-Michel Byron they brought in, just that they did 4 new songs. It was kind of like a compilation greatest hits album to that point, and they put 4 new studio songs on it with the Jean-Michel Byron guy singing, but he lasted probably all of, I don't know.
Well, they did a European tour with him, and I think a Japanese tour. I think they did Japanese dates. Again, do you have the book?
I did, but I haven't. I really
the stuff that's written, it's hysterical.
He talks about Steve Lukather's book. He talks about that.
My God, it's hysterical.
Yeah, really,
about what a tool the guy was. And, that's they auditioned him, and the guy could sing. They thought he could sing, but they didn't realize until they started doing shows with him, that it was a bad
His stage presence wasn't.
I mean, it was just a horrible fit.
I think like Jeff Porcaro was big on him. Kind of a champion to get him into the mix there, but
he was. He was. That's you're 100% right. At least that's what the book indicates.
Yeah. Well, I think it's funny because I was reading some stuff where they said it was like, they started out when they did the tour for that album, and they got the 4 new songs with him, and they're featuring him as kind of the new lead singer. And it was like, once they started seeing the way he's acting up on stage and everything, they kind of like started pushing him to the background.
There's a DVD of him.
And Lukather kind of takes forefront.
Right. And he just kind of stands in the back with like a maracas or a bongo or something. And, and then they bring him out at the end to sing a couple of songs. And he's like like a Rastafarian dude. And, he's not connecting at all with the Toto audience at that point. I mean, his stage moves. Again, it was just a guy that, it was just a poor fit.
Yeah.
But they said, though, that he had the vocal chops. It wasn't like he didn't have the ability.
Yeah.
It was just that he didn't,
The talent was there, but the
execution
execution was
exactly. The execution was way off the mark.
I think he was a South African guy.
Yes.
Right? So, whatever that is, but yeah. So the band's in like a weird state of flux, and I mean, the 7th album comes out in '88, and then the next album after that is 1992. So you're talking like 4 years
Yeah.
later.
It's a nice break.
And Kingdom of Desire comes out. And that, I think at this point, we were just talking about this earlier. This album and the album after that, just radical departure from the Toto sound, right?
Off the pad, yeah.
What were your feelings on Kingdom of Desire?
Yeah, it from here on out, I think for me, the Toto just something changes, you know, like, and I mean, Kingdom of Desire, it's got heavy songs on it.
Yeah.
But it is just a drastic change, you know, from the original formula and everything before it. So, you know, I mean, there's the song, I think what stands out the most on here is Don't Chain My Heart.
That's a great song.
That's my favorite song on the album, which is, it's a heavy song. Never Enough, and the title track, Kingdom of Desire as well. Everything else, I'm going to say again, you know, take it or leave it.
Yeah.
It is a lot heavier than most of the albums before. But again, it's just so different than everything before. So I don't know. I'm indifferent about it.
I mean, it's early '90s. You got a little bit of that alternative.
Yeah, you could hear it.
And some of the stuff, right? What do you think, Tom? Like what were your
I don't hear
feelings?
anything alternative. I saw
Not maybe like more like attitude. You know, like the way they.
Oh
were,
yeah,
Yeah.
well,
Like, you
first of all,
looked
they
at
were
some of
stripped
those-
down basically had always been basically a 6-piece band. We're now
That's
a
true,
4-piece
right?
band.
That's true.
So
yeah.
the sound was stripped down. There wasn't a proper front man.
Yeah.
Lukather had always been viewed as a guy that sang 1 or 2 songs on the album.
Right.
Now all of a sudden he was the singer,
Frontman. Yeah.
and they were down to 1 keyboard player. There was Paich. I love this, you know, with Mike and Steve Porcaro. I love this 4-man lineup. I love this album. I adore this album.
You're big into Gypsy Train, right?
Oh yeah, I loved everything on this.
She
album.
knows the devil.
She knows the.
That's actually a good song.
It's
for
a
what it is, you know?
it's a ballsy album
Two
that
Hearts,
also.
I like a lot.
Oh, I love that
that's a good
too.
song. Yeah.
Great song. His
Yeah.
vocals are so good. And I was telling TJ this. He developed himself as such a good singer. Like you kind of like he wasn't a guy that just like sang a song on an album
Right.
anymore. And then you were saying, "Well, this friggin' guy is good."
Yeah.
Okay, he may not be Bobby Kimball at his peak,
Right.
but you know the thing with Steve Lukather, he knows the limitations of his voice. He's got a beautiful sounding voice.
Yeah.
And he doesn't push himself too high, or
Right.
he just knows how to sing. And I mean, I loved him as a lead singer. And you got more guitar, you got more bottom end, you still got a lot of Hammond organ on this,
That's
which
true.
I
They
like.
changed
I
the
love the
sound
Hammond
to the
organ
Hammond,
sound.
yeah.
It was kind of like this was Toto as a hard rock band
True.
with some ballads thrown in, but basically Toto as a balls to the wall hard rock.
Yeah. You know what Gypsy Train always reminded me of? Think of like, and you might not know this, TJ, but Tom will know. Think of like when Joe Satriani had those couple songs with vocals.
Yeah.
Remember in that? Like it has that
I saw him
sound,
on that tour.
right? It has that
Yes,
feel, like
absolutely.
almost that Gypsy Train. Like when
Yep.
as soon as I hear that song, I always think of like Satriani with that big bad wolf song that he had. Remember that?
Yes, that was that Flying in a Blue Dream
Yeah,
album.
when he did a
I
couple
saw him.
songs. When
I
he
saw him
sang
on
a
that
few
tour.
songs
Yeah,
here and there. It has that sound to
Yes,
me for
it
some
does.
reason. And weren't they on? That was Relativity. Wasn't this on Relativity too?
I have the Japanese press of it.
I think weren't they?
I think it was on Relativity
in the U.S.
States.
and
yeah.
Satriani was Relativity. Right?
Satriani was. Yeah, this
That's
came
interesting.
out in. Yeah, it is.
Well, they were weird because they had a stretch where they were at this point they were really big in Europe,
Yes.
and it was like the albums were like when they got released in Europe, they might have came out 6 months earlier in Europe than it did in America.
Right.
It's kind of like a weird. They did that for a
Yeah.
few albums. It was
Yes.
like strange
Yes. I mean, they kind of lost their mojo in the States.
Oh, totally.
With this
Yeah.
lineup.
for sure. Yeah,
Because this wasn't a lineup that you could. Yeah, remember, it's already in
yeah,
'92.
it's the '90s. Yeah,
The sound
I mean,
of
you know,
rock is
hard
changing,
rock as
yeah.
we knew it went belly up in the
Right.
States to begin with.
exactly.
And now you have, Toto without Joseph Williams or Bobby Kimball.
Yeah,
The guitar player's singing, and, it's a different sound.
yeah,
Yeah, they weren't selling many records.
yeah. Well, now, like you move on to again. This to me, these are the bookends. These two albums because they're similar, but you got Tamboo, and that's 1995.
Well, it's
so we're
similar
smack in
lineup,
the
but
middle of-
I mean, you lost Jeff.
That's right. Well, that's a good point. That's a big, huge thing.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Jeff passed away in between the
Yeah.
release of these two albums.
That's
so,
right.
it was the introduction of Simon Phillips, who had a
yeah.
very long run with them as the drummer.
That's right.
It's kind of a different stylistic album. This is like I think much more laid back album.
More bluesy, you think?
Yeah, bluesy, ballady.
Oh, the to me probably maybe the best Toto ballad. I don't know. There's a lot of them, but I mean, I Will Remember. That to me is like,
yeah, that's a great song.
One of the best.
There was
Toto ballads.
I Will Remember is terrific. Gift of Faith is a really good song. So I remember when I bought this album, I heard Gift of Faith and I loved it.
Okay.
And I figured this was going to be like another album of this type of lineup, and it's really not. It's much more laid back than its predecessor.
It is, yeah.
Too laid back for me.
Yeah, it's an okay album. And again, like we were talking about this, and I have the Japanese copy, which has an extra song called Black Eye.
Oh yeah.
Rating this as a lower echelon album is still better than 99%.
That's true. Yeah.
Of every band that's out there. Yep. So it's like not a knock on the, we're pulling apart a band that's, next to perfection. So
yeah,
there's got to be a couple of albums that, pull up the bottom. But I mean, this is far from a bad album. It's just,
it was different. It was different for what Toto was.
I mean, it's good.
Yeah.
It's not great. It's got some songs that are a little bit of a snooze fest. But it's
I think both those albums there, had that, some great songs and then just some
I didn't have any songs I didn't like on this.
No.
Okay. I really love this album.
Okay.
Really, really love this album.
Well,
but that's me.
Well, no, and that's perfectly cool because we all have, and it's funny because we all had, when we looked at our list here, our top list, we all were different number ones and stuff, and it was pretty radically different.
It was different, yeah.
But I'm going to bring up an album now because 1995, Tamboo. Now Bobby Kimball comes back for another 4 years. Yeah, 1999, Bobby Kimball comes back into the mix, into the fold here, and they released the Minefields album, and this is where I actually, and I mentioned it before, it's where I really got into the band. My introduction to them, as far as buying albums and listening to them, I knew the songs, but I didn't really have the albums, but this is a song where you mentioned, or this is an album where you just mentioned that there's not a bad song on Kingdom of Desire for you. This album, I highlighted, every song got highlighted when I was
it's a very strong album.
I there's not one song on this album that I don't like.
Did you have this crappy digipack too?
No, I have the Jap version of it. So
you do?
It's the jewel case one. What is that? What is that? The American or European?
Guess, yeah. I hate these digipacks.
Yeah,
they suck.
Digipacks suck. Nobody likes them. So, but what were your So, TJ, what are your feelings on this album? I know you said you kind of lost the band that the last two albums before that.
This is better than Tamboo, I think.
Okay,
for sure.
Did you have any feelings? What Bobby Kimball's back? Is that mean anything to you?
Yeah. I mean, there's some songs that hit for me, Mysterious Ways, and then the song Minefield itself hit for me, but mixed vibes about this album. Yeah. For me, like I said, I every album, every song on this album. I mean, Tom and I just mentioned it's probably one of the best Toto songs to me. Caught in the Balance. Right.
That's a great song. I love that song too, and I love the first track on the album is so Beatles.
After
Cruel?
You've Gone.
Yeah.
Oh, Cruel, right.
Cruel. It's so Beatles. It's like what the Beatles would sound like in 1999.
Yeah. It's true. Yeah.
Great song.
I like that High Price of Hate.
That's another great song too. That's another song that I like a lot. No, this is a terrific album. This was a very welcomed return to what
Last Love is a great song.
Last Love is a terrific song also.
Lukather singing the ballady and stuff.
Yeah, this is a very strong album. Very strong album. That definitely put them back on the map, at least with Europe, and Japan. I don't know how big did they tour this in the States, this album?
I don't think so. I think they didn't tour the States or get back into doing the States until the next album.
That's what I thought
which
too.
was-
Yeah.
So that was
So I mean,
Falling
it
in
wasn't
Between.
like it didn't put them into huge commercial success again,
Mm.
but the fact that Bobby Kimball was back
fact meant something. Yeah.
meant a lot, and the
Yeah.
fact that he sounded so good
He
and they
did.
had
Yeah.
such well written songs on it.
A lot of long songs though here.
Yeah,
It's
there
6
is.
minutes,
It's a
5
long
minutes.
album. Yeah.
High Price of Fate's almost 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, 6 minutes, 7. Yeah, they got a lot of long songs. There's 14 songs on this
What
album.
what the last thing that ends the album is Better World.
Better
It's
World.
Yeah.
got like it starts out instrumental a few minutes,
That's
then it
7
kicks
minutes.
in
That's awesome.
vocally, lyrically. It comes kicks in, then it's like got like different parts to it and stuff. So it's it almost sort of a little bit of a progressive,
Yeah.
thing, and
For sure.
brought that back into the fold for them.
And you know, you had the lineup of Lukather, Paich, and again,
Mike
Mike
Porcaro,
Mike on
yeah,
bass, which had been the same three guys from the previous albums, and
Yeah.
Simon Phillips
Simon Phillips
replaced
still playing on
Jeff, who
drums,
passed
yeah.
away.
Yeah,
And it was a triumphant return for Kimball. He looked good,
yeah,
he sounded good, and the writing on the album was good. I mean, I remember as a Toto fan being thrilled with this album at the time.
yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
Well, then that brings us that was like 1999. There's actually a good
Huge
period,
gap,
huge
yeah.
gap again. 5,
7
6
year gap.
years, 6,
7
7
year
years,
gap.
6 years, 7 years. Falling in Between comes out in 2006, right? I know
This
Tom's
guy.
big. You're big on this,
Yep.
so I'm gonna let you.
Go ahead.
talk
well,
about
I,
your
I
thing.
love this album. It was a little change in lineup. Paich was gone, who was always a mainstay.
Yeah, kind of semi-retired again.
Yeah, right. He needed a break, and they brought in Greg Philaganis, who I was familiar with, and I mean, he's been in so many different bands. Was he?
He played with Eric Clapton.
He was with Clapton. I think he was with Stevie Wonder too.
I believe
Yeah,
so. Yes.
yeah. And I thought he fit in great. I just love he co-wrote some of the songs. He sang on some of the songs.
That was the first time you saw him.
Yes,
and me too. We were at the same show.
We were at that
Irving
show
Plaza.
in Irving Plaza.
New York City.
Right.
We saw him, and it was that tour.
Was
That
this
that
lineup and that tour, and wow, they were on fire. They were so good,
Yeah.
and they did a lot of songs from this album. And I really connected with this album, probably as much as any Toto album they've ever released. And I know it's a mixed bag with a lot of people with this album. It's not it's not as big a favorite with a lot of people as it is with me.
Yeah. No, and I'm one of them for sure, because as much as I loved Minefields, I think 6, 7 years later, this comes out. You think I would be Kimball's still there?
Yeah.
He sounded good and everything, and it didn't resonate.
Yes,
with
I
this
liked it
album.
better than Minefields, and I like
Really?
Minefields, but there was something special about this album. A lot of the songs really connect. I was playing some of them for TJ tonight, trying to get him, and they just didn't resonate with him. So,
No.
there's songs on there that really touch me. Like I really,
Yeah, I'm just sitting there. I'm like,
yeah. He's like,
Nah.
he's watching me freaking out, and I'm like, and he's like,
Well, I'll have to go with TJ now, because I think there's maybe like 4 songs on the album.
Really?
I have
Oh,
three.
wow.
Three.
Like,
Three I have here. King
Dying
of the
on
World.
My Feet.
Nope.
No, that wasn't one of them.
Oh, boy.
Falling in Between, super
Spiritual
heavy, great
Man?
song. No, not really.
King of the World. King of the World.
King of the World's great.
That's a good one.
Simple Life?
Bottom of Your Soul.
King of the World, Hooked.
Yeah,
Bottom
no.
of your,
Taint
bottom
Your
of your
World.
soul.
I mean,
was
no one did
tremendous.
cite Bottom of Your Soul, King of the World.
Taint Your
and
World's good.
Falling in Between.
Taint Your World. Yeah, this is
Really?
The song
That's
"Falling in
cool.
Between." I don't know.
I
It starts
love
out the
that.
album, and I
I
just
love
think
that.
Kimball is just
Yeah,
just
you know,
trying
because
too hard, and it's just not really
Nah.
doing it.
because you got Steve sang some of the songs, Philaganis sang
Yeah.
big parts of songs, and Kimball. I love that. Paich had kind of for years pulled himself out of singing.
Yeah.
And I thought nothing against Paich, because there's no Toto without Paich.
Right.
But I thought the Philaganis was a big shot in the arm to them live. He was a really energetic live performer behind the keyboards. and he wrote a lot, he sang a lot on this album, and I would have loved to seen him stay with I would have loved to seen them do had that as they were doing 2 keyboards down
Right.
the road. I would have loved to seen Philiganis and Paich together. It never happened, but yeah, I could gush about this album for hours, and I won't.
And you do.
And I won't.
And you do. Well, this is how I'll end off with this. Okay. All Music's review says Toto was a band trying to find itself during a midlife crisis with this album.
Yeah.
That's what they
And
say.
perhaps I was too.
And perhaps you were too.
Right, since I'm
that
like
could be
basically the same age as they are. So, and that could very well be because I was kind of off
Yeah.
in some other galaxy at that time. So.
Could be. Well, we talk about gaps. There were some big gaps we just talked about, but I think this is the biggest gap now
This
because
is a big one.
that album, Falling in Between, comes out in 2006, and their next studio album isn't until 2015.
Yep.
Right, with the 14 album as Roman numeral, displayed on the cover. But
If I could, and I hate to ask questions about something I don't remember, or you guys may not know. What filled in the gaps with them for 9 years? Like off the top of I'm sure Lukather did one of his mediocre solo albums in that time.
He did put out some solo
One of
albums
his many
at that
mediocre
point. You're
solo
right.
albums.
I think they just toured Europe and stuff because they were just
But not for
doing,
9 years.
No. I mean, I think they were just doing tours because they played Irving Plaza, right? And you mentioned that Lukather wasn't happy with the band doing,
Yet they
clubs
did
in
a
America.
whole nother loop around with the Falling in Between album.
You saw them at BB King's?
I saw them at BB King's like
With that
probably a year and a half
same
after when I
tour.
saw them at
Really?
yeah.
Yeah, I missed that
because,
show. Yeah.
Mike already was not well and was out of the band, and
They had that
Leland
Sklar,
Sklar was
yeah.
playing bass for them, and
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was it was way after the fact of that first tour. So yeah, they did tour the hell out of this in clubs in the States.
And that is a good question. I really don't know. I mean, I know they did. You were just huge in Europe, and they were playing arenas. So I'm sure they just did tours without really didn't have to have a new album behind them, type of thing. But I don't really know. Like, Lukather definitely did some solo albums.
One of his endless mediocre albums.
One or two,
Yeah.
maybe even. He had
Right.
a couple around that time. They came out in somewhat short order, if
Yeah.
I remember. So that might have been what he was doing. Maybe just because maybe he felt at that point like, hey, Paich is kind of like retired, and Porcaro was had his issues, right? Because he ended up having he suffered from MLS or
Lou Gehrig's disease.
ALS.
I'm sorry, yeah, ALS. So he ended up passing, and that was just before the 14 album came out, right?
Yes.
That was So
Yes.
maybe Lukather was just kind of like, hey, you
Yeah.
know what?
Because I until you mentioned, I didn't realize what a big break that was. It was almost a decade.
Yeah,
Yeah. 9
totally.
years.
But I mean, as far as the album though, I love this album. This is
14.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite Toto albums. And we talked about this when this came out. You were like, a band that's almost 40 years into their career at this point, and they're putting out an album like this. I mean, it was just
It's a really good album.
really good album.
Even the album cover is really cool too.
Yes.
Weakens a little bit toward the end. It's a little top heavy in terms of, at least what I think.
Okay.
The first half of it is, I think it's as good as probably anything they've ever done. And not that there's weak songs, getting toward the second half of it, but it's a little top heavy, I think. But
Really?
there's stuff on here that's just incredible.
Yeah,
First 3 songs I think are really strong.
Yeah.
Running Out of Time, Burn, and Holy
Holy
War.
War. See, I
really
love even
good.
21st Century Blues.
Yeah, I like that
Orphan,
too.
Unknown
Yeah.
Soldier.
I often
You
Song
mentioned
for
before.
Jeffrey is
Unknown
tremendous.
Soldier, Song for Jeffrey.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
It's
you
kinda
mentioned,
like
TJ,
from,
about Chinatown.
Right.
Chinatown
Yeah.
is what we were talking about, was originally a really old song.
Yeah.
Um,
The only song I really didn't hit me was Fortune.
Fortune, right.
And then, but
Fortune's
I mean,
a good one.
Great Expectation at the end with Paich, it's like very
Yeah.
progressive.
Yeah, no, that's a good song too.
And
And the Japanese copy has an extra song called Bend.
oh yeah, I remember
Right.
that song. It's like it's like a ballady song. Is
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Do you guys like Orphan?
I love that.
Yeah,
song.
I like
that
that
was
song
a
too.
single, I think, right?
Mhm.
When that came out, that was a great song.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really been it as far as like proper studio albums from Toto.
Right.
2018 they put out the box set, and I think the Old is New album came out, which was kind of like a compilation. It had some, if you listen to it, it has songs that sound like they could have came from the 14 era, and then it had songs with some of the original with like Jeff Porcaro and Mike Porcaro on it and stuff that they kind of.
I gotta be honest, I've only listened to that album maybe 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, well, I came out as part of the box set initially, but like I think
Right.
2020
And then they released it separately.
standalone. Yeah. But it was, that was.
There was nothing that I found there was nothing bad on it. There was nothing overly immediate about it either.
Right. Well, the last tour they did.
They did a song or two.
They did two. They did Alone and Spanish Sea.
Right.
They were
Spanish
doing live
Sea. Right.
in their set, in the very last tour before they kind of broke up, and now they're
Right.
back again, of course. But yeah, they were doing songs from that album, or at least from that sessions or whatever you want to call them, But I mean, will we ever see another Toto album? You think they will ever do another one?
I think if he keeps this lineup in place with him and Joseph Williams with the new guys, I love the new guys in his band.
Yeah,
I think there should be something. I would think with all those that young blood.
I mean, you would hope.
think.
The only thing and I'm not, we're talking about Toto, but let's bring up Journey for a minute, because they're in the news most recently with all these Jonathan Cain suing Neil Sean and Neil Sean suing Jonathan Cain and this whole thing. And Toto obviously went through their own legal battles, right? A few years. And that led to that initial breakup there a few years ago. I remember I saw him in New Jersey. It was like the third to last show that they were doing it. And at that point they were like, this is it.
Right.
We're done. And I mean, I never thought they would play again. I mean, obviously they got back together and toured actually with Journey and everything, but I don't know what the legal ramifications are. Can they do another album?
Yeah, they can. He brought the name back.
He did get it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because remember we were talking a couple of years ago that he was saying that he may have to play, or they may have to play under a different name.
Oh, right.
But
well,
the
there
case
was that
did
talk.
go to court and everything, and he did buy back the
Really?
name. Yeah, and he said it cost him quite a bit of money.
Okay.
Yeah, so they can.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
They can do anything. He could do anything he wants under the Toto moniker.
Okay. Well,
Fingers
guys,
crossed.
like
Yeah.
you said, I hope they do, because they do. I mean, they put out a DVD, right, with these new guys that they've got
Shot
playing
live in
band,
the studio, which
live
is
in the
tremendous.
studio was kind of a pandemic era thing
Oh, okay.
that happened, and it's got the new lineup, and then
Oh,
that
those guys
lineup's
are
been
hot.
touring.
Those
with,
guys are hot
with
players.
Journey and stuff.
Yeah.
So, and they're touring again. They're starting up in March, I think, of this year. They're going to start another tour with Journey again, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully we do see something, from them again.
Hopefully.
I think,
Fingers crossed.
I think you will.
Yeah. And we just also wanted to mention too, because we did talk about basically all the proper studio albums that we think they did, and I mentioned at one point they did the Past to Present album, which came out in 1990, that had the 4 songs with the
Right.
John Michelle Byron on it. But there was 2 other albums I think that are worth mentioning in the Toto discography discussion. In 1998 they put out like I guess it was like kind of a 20th anniversary sort of thing. It was called 20, like the double X for the Roman numerals, but it featured a bunch of tracks right from the band's history, and there's some great songs on there.
There's a
In
couple of
fact,
tremendous songs.
Going Home
Yep.
is the lead track on that, and that is just
Tale of a Man.
great album. Tale of a Man is great, and a song, and we were just talking about this, the song On the Run.
On the Run
It's a live on there. It's a live version, and I don't think the band ever recorded a studio version.
They
of that,
didn't.
right?
And they played that song in recent years in their set.
Yeah. Well, it's
Yeah.
funny if you listen to the was it the DVD that came out, the Nitro one. Actually, when they open up with that song with
Right.
On the Run, and Lukather says, "Hey, this is a song from our new album we're working on," or something to that effect. And I guess it just never got.
It's never appeared on a studio album as a studio cut.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
a great song.
Terrific
man.
song.
It's
This
a
thing
great-
has got a couple of greats. If you don't have it, it's worth picking up if you're
Yeah.
a Toto fan.
Yep. And then the one last album I'm going to mention is in 2002, the band put out a covers album called Through the Looking Glass. And it's kind of a weird, to me, I think just the songs and the bands that they chose. Obviously,
It's unnecessary. I mean, I
Yeah.
own it because, this is what I do.
Right. No, but I mean, hey, they did a Steely Dan song.
There's 1
right.
or 2 things that are saving graces. Living for the City was pretty cool.
I mean, they did a Beatles song because obviously you could tell they're obviously a band that was influenced by the Beatles. They did like a Stevie Wonder
House of the
song.
Rising Sun. Why would that be
Yeah, like you need to
necessary?
do that anymore.
Right.
I
Why would
mean,
that be necessary?
But they do stuff like they did an Elton John song, a Cream song, Elvis Costello song, if I'm not mistaken. So
Sunshine of Your Love.
right. Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Does that need to be covered
Right.
anymore?
Right.
So yeah, I mean
It was what it was.
It was what it was, exactly. Yeah. So that's pretty much like all the Toto albums, the proper studio albums of compilations that were worth mentioning, that it maybe had some songs on them that were not anywhere else. So I guess like we always do on these episodes when we talk about, we have our top list. We each give you our rundown of our least favorite to most favorite. Who wants to start this one?
Let this guy start.
TJ start. So let's go your least favorite, build up the up to number one, so we keep the suspense going.
Okay. At number 12 I have Taboo. Number 11 is Minefields. Number 10 is Falling in Between. Number 9 is Toto 14. Number 8 is Hydra. Number 7 is Kingdom of Desire. Number 6 is Fahrenheit. Number 5 is Isolation. Number 4 is The Seventh One. Number 3 is Toto 4. Number 2 is Turn Back. And number 1 is Toto 1.
Nice.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad. You can go.
Want me to go? All right. Well, and we talked about this because we were originally going to do 13 albums discussion, and we are going to have Old is New, which was the last thing they put out. But we said, let's kind of not talk about that. So I'll start with number 12 is Hydra. Then number 11 is Falling in Between. You're going to kill me on that, right? Number 10 is Taboo. Number 9 is Isolation. Number 8, Kingdom of Desire. Number 7 is Fahrenheit. Number 6 is the debut, Toto. Number 5 is Toto 4. Number 4 is The Seventh One. Number 3 is Toto 14. Number 2 is Minefields. And my most favorite album of Toto ever is number 1, Turn Back. So there you go.
All right. I'm not a big fan of going backwards to frontwards, so I'm going to start from the top.
Oh, you're killing us.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's number 1 for me is Fahrenheit. As I expounded on, it was a perfect album to me. Number 2 is another nearly perfect album, Falling in Between for me. Number 3, another huge favorite of mine, Kingdom of Desire. 4 was Turn Back. 5 was the self-titled debut. 6 was 4. 7 was 14. Minefields was 8. Seventh One was 9. Hydra was 10. Isolation 11. Taboo was 12.
Interesting. I think we're pretty radically different on a lot.
I said that to you. I think that we're all like,
we're all over the place.
All over the place.
Which is really interesting because we're 3 really big fans of this.
And it's, you know what? It says a lot for the band.
Yeah.
That's what it says.
It's very diverse.
Right.
Very diverse.
That there's so many people, so many different types
3
of people
guys
that
from
can
3
pick up
different eras that are crazy fans, have totally different lists.
Yeah.
And that is such a compliment to the band.
I thought it was interesting. And I said that earlier on mine. It's like my top 3, I go like Turn Back is my favorite, which is an early era album. And then I go to Minefield, which is like a mid-period album. And then I go to like 14, which is their last last album essentially. So it's like my top 3
and there's very few bands that you're going to find 3 diehard fans. They're going to have so different lists.
Yeah.
In fact, I've thought of so many other bands to do for the 3 of us.
Yeah.
And just one thing that entered my mind recently was Dio. And I said, it's kind of a everybody's going to have the first 3 or 4 albums.
Yeah.
You know, and it's it's not that interesting.
Yeah.
There was the fall off with Dio after the 4th album, and who's not going to have Holy Diver or Last in Line?
Right.
Yeah, so I thought that's not that great of an idea. But to come up with a band like this with a dozen albums and 3 fans have different lists, it's a huge compliment to the band, and it's an interesting podcast. Hopefully everybody else
for me
that interesting.
The early stuff is
you're an early
really,
stuff
really,
guy. Yeah,
really does the trick for me.
Yeah, and for me, as good as that stuff was, they grew beyond that, and that's what I gravitated more to.
Oh yeah,
in my mind.
Yeah.
Like for me, my first, 1 to 3 is Total 1, then the third album, then the fourth. So it's like all the early stuff is like really, really high up for me,
Right.
So, and then as the list goes on, down to 12, it gets, more and more later on in the career of Toto. You see Falling in Between, Minefields, Tambu, all that stuff is like from 10 to 12.
Yeah.
Stuff that you guys like, you like Minefields, you like Falling in Between. But for me, it's all the way towards the bottom. But Tambu for me is like, that's number 12. That's not going to change.
Again,
I think it makes sense,
12 in a great band.
Right.
Tambu is better than, probably 75% of the albums that I own.
Right.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
And it's ranked last,
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
again, it's a testament to the band, and this was a lot of fun. Hope everybody enjoyed it.
So this was it was our first video episode. If you're watching us on YouTube, and again, like I said earlier, let us know what you think. Do you like the idea of us doing video?
Not that it's going to change.
Right.
Mark spent a lot of money on this.
Well, I think what we're going to do, and you and I have talked about this, Tom, I think we're probably going to try and do a little mix of things, right? Like do some stuff with video, and then maybe other things. We would just go back to our audio format that we did, initially. So
depending on the guest, the location of the guest, and what we don't want to do is, overextend ourselves, and coming up without divulging guests. We're going to start doing guys that are overseas. And we do broadcast from a makeshift studio in a basement in Freehold, New Jersey, and to start doing some stuff overseas with Britain and Germany, with Zoom. It may lose the flow of us doing an in-depth interview, just strictly audio. So we'll gauge those as we go along. But certainly things that we do with TJ, maybe Phil DiBenedetto is going to come back at some point.
You have some ideas you talked about,
and a lot of stuff with
me
and
bring
Mark,
some of his memorabilia and Phil can show us off some.
TJ is a registered nurse, and he works long hours and night shifts, so we're limited as to how often we could get him. And we're going to take it, one step at a time with it. We're going to try to do as many videos as we can, but there probably will be some stuff that we will still do audio. Especially with overseas guests and stuff like that, to just keep the continuity. Anybody that's been watching us, they know we do usually an hour long, sometimes longer. So it's not your run of the mill. How did you get into the music business? How's your new album doing? And what'd you have for lunch today? Right. Podcast. So if we get a guest on from Leeds, England, we may do it just strictly with the audio to
so that was this episode. We hope you guys enjoyed it, and again, let us know your thoughts on it, and join in. We're gonna post our all our lists here on the website on Facebook like we usually do, so join in on that. Let us know your thoughts on do you think Tom's list was good, or TJ's was good, or mine was good, or you have something else that you feel different on it too. Let us know.
Tom's list was the best.
Right. There you go. So anyway, enjoy. We hope you like this one, and we'll see you soon.